Hello everybody, this is Brian Goulet of GouletPens.com, and I'm here for a very special Goulet Guest where I'm doing a Skype interview with Linda Shrewsbury. Linda is the founder of CursiveLogic, which is the intuitive cursive handwriting system that is kind of self-paced. And she has turned a desire to help one kid learn to sign his name into a system that's helping thousands of people to learn cursive. And I learned about her from her Kickstarter project, and she is now turned into retail expansion, and I'm pleased to be offering her book. So she is helping to turn her passion for teaching one kid cursive handwriting into being able to teach thousands of people how to carry on the lesson of learning cursive in an increasingly time-starved world. So I'm absolutely honored to have Linda on today. Linda, thank you so much for being here.
Oh, thank you, Brian. This is a real pleasure.
Absolutely. So for somebody who doesn't know what CursiveLogic is, can you kind of briefly explain what your system is all about?
Okay, I can. CursiveLogic is a way to take the task of learning cursive handwriting and break it down from 26 lessons to 4. And I think that's the thing I was looking for, and that I think most people find wonderful about the system. The idea that this task they expected to be just very tedious and boring can actually be a lot shorter and a lot more fun. That's
true. I remember back when I was learning cursive, because I was still taught cursive back in the day. For me, it was about 3rd grade or so. It was kind of a chore. I remember not really loving it, and if I didn't do it perfectly, then I would have to do it over again, and it seems kind of what should I say, mandatory, and kind of forced. And then after I didn't have to do it again, I never wanted to do it anymore. Now, do you have a teaching background, or how did you kind of get into coming up with this system?
Well, I've been teaching all my life, not with a degree or anything, but I started out teaching childbirth education of all things. I've been a homeschooler. My degree is in economics, and I went back and got a master's in international studies and taught at the college level. What was it that I taught? Not marketing, but international development. And I also taught 1st grade, so I've just had teaching experience in many different spheres. But I was teaching a young man, tutoring him as a volunteer tutor in reading. And he said he wanted to learn to sign his name, and it was a challenge to me. I thought, I want to do this, I want to teach him this, but I can't do it the way we teach 3rd graders, letter by letter, day by day for months. I was looking for a shorter way to do it, and we found it.
Yeah, I mean, I think you mentioned in the book here, and you mentioned in your video and some of your other stories that you've explained, that he wanted to be able to sign his own name in cursive, and he did it in about 45 minutes, which is pretty impressive.
It did happen, and I remember at the time, I wasn't thinking forward or anything, but I thought, I wonder how long it will take, and I remember noting the time and then looking up and seeing. So that's the only reason I know that, okay? It's because it was specifically on my mind. I was excited about the system when I saw it, because I thought, imagine all these years and I've never seen this pattern in cursive. Yeah. And it's not a pattern that other people haven't come up with my specific pattern, but obviously there are loops in cursive, and there are letters that descend at the baseline, and letters that go up to the top line. So there are definite, patterns and groups of letters. But what we have done is put them together in letter strings, which you will find nowhere else. And that makes the learning to do it very reinforcing. Every time you make one letter, you're reinforcing at least 6 letters.
That's wonderful.
And I think that's the thing that's neat.
So how did you actually come up with this? Because it seems like this is a, it's interesting because it's something that's kind of revolutionary for something that's been around for a very long time. So what was your process for actually discovering this?
The process was observation. I wrote all the letters out on a big white sheet of paper. It's one of those dry erase. They used to have these dry erase sheets that you can get. I was doing a master's thesis, and I had them for trying to work on my thesis. And so I got one of those pieces out. I put it on the door of my bedroom, and I wrote the letters out. And I thought, I'm going to find a pattern here. And so, you find the obvious ones very quickly. But I think one of the things that I really liked was finding that all the cursive letters begin on the baseline and end on the baseline, except for 4. And that's O, B, V, and W. Those letters end on the midline. And when I saw that there was one of those letters in each of my strings, and I could put it out on the end, then I thought, wow, this is amazing. And the idea of that is that you can help students understand, you can help them kind of see the logic of cursive writing, that there is a way that you can think about it. It's not just about rote memorization and learning. There are some patterns that will help you to execute more easily and with more understanding.
Yeah, and I gotta say, the patterns definitely seem to be working. What is realistically, the expectation for somebody to be able to take this and use this? Obviously, being able to write something in 45 minutes is pretty impressive. Is that kind of normal? Is it like you can pick it up in 45 minutes, you can have beautiful handwriting, or is it something that still takes a lot of practice?
Handwriting still takes practice, okay? But you can learn the fundamentals a lot more easily. And what we found is that in the classroom and personally, people are just finding that they move through it more quickly. So let me give you a couple of examples. We had a school in Dallas that picked us up, and they did that in January. So they've been teaching the kids cursive earlier. They got the CursiveLogic method, started using that with their kids, and the headmistress at the school said she was just surprised at how quickly the kids made progress, because they really had been struggling with it. And then all of a sudden, when they saw these patterns, they were able to pick it up, and just their handwriting's beautiful. So that's a school situation. Our initial market was homeschoolers. Homeschoolers really, they care about handwriting, and that was a place where we had an in. And so, I know what we did. We did a test market thing with 100 homeschoolers kind of looking at our product. And we got such incredible feedback. We had one mother who said, it took my son 6 months to learn printing, so I never expected him to learn cursive in 10 days.
Wow.
That was one of our first things. So now, we really want to be careful. We don't want to overpromise. We don't want to tell everybody that they're going to do that. And hey, learning it in a month is awfully good also, So what we recommend to schools and teachers and homeschools, anyone, is to take a string a week, practice that, do the exercises, and then the following week, another string. So there are 4 strings. That would take you 4 weeks. And then give yourself another couple of weeks to learn the capital letters. You'll notice that we start with the lowercase, and we don't mess with capitals until you've mastered the lowercase. Because it turns out most of cursive is written in lowercase. You have capitals at the beginning of a sentence, and capitals for names and places and nouns and proper nouns. But mostly you're writing with the lowercase alphabet. So that's what we teach first, and that's where the patterns are that are unique to CursiveLogic.
Yeah, that's wonderful. So are you primarily looking for teachers to be focused on this, or is it really something that somebody can use themselves? Like, say you're an adult and you never really learned cursive, or you want to relearn it. It can be used for that as well.
Yeah, that's the thing I like about our book is it can serve all the different folks who have an interest in doing this. It's not in any way kiddie, kind of what am I trying to say? There are no gimmicks, no little cartoons or whatever. And so a parent, like a homeschooling parent, can give it to a 14-year-old, and they're not, they don't feel like, oh my gosh, this is talking down to me, or I'm doing baby stuff. And in fact, one of our first beta testers was a lawyer who wanted to practice handwriting with his left hand. And so he wanted to use the system to try to see if he could, kind of switch himself over. And definitely gave us a thumbs up. We said, okay, we're going with this.
Wow.
So I think it appeals to, yeah, people can use it with their second, third, fourth graders and on up. I think it's actually even better for remediation because people already know a lot about cursive. When they see the patterns, they just make sense to them and they go with it.
That makes a lot of sense. And, you know, being in the fountain pen world like I am, typically it's more adults that I tend to be affiliated with. So I think a lot of who is buying it for Goulet pens is people who are in that exact situation. So that's kind of encouraging to hear. So do you find that it's faster to kind of relearn or for an adult to pick it up than it would be for a kid? Or
Absolutely. Yeah. That's, yeah, and even older students, you know, like not elementary, but upper elementary, 5th, 6th graders, they love it because they pick it up and quickly they've figured out how to master this. And again, I'm not saying that you have perfect handwriting after that. But
Sure.
you certainly know what you're doing and how to practice correctly.
Yeah. Now, as far as a practicing regimen, you know, what would you kind of recommend starting out? You said, 4 weeks would probably be pretty good. How much time per day are we talking about? Especially if you're an adult, you're busy, you got things going on. What do you think is a kind of practical?
If you do this 20 minutes a day, you're going to be fine.
Okay.
20 minutes, especially for an adult. And I want to speak to your adult audience because we actually would like to do something that's geared strictly for adults, and that's kind of in the works right now. So, stay tuned for that, Brian.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, but the thing I have loved, and actually I started this before the handwriting thing, was journaling. And my daughter gave me a journal. It was about 6 years ago, and at first I thought, what am I going to do with this? A nice Moleskine journal.
Yeah.
And unlined pages, and so I started, writing grocery lists in it, and then sermon notes, and then other things, and then I found, man, I really enjoyed not, dear diary, this is what I did today, but expressing my thoughts in it, and it takes a while to kind of figure out how you want to do this, and I did a lot of copying of things that were inspirational to me. If I saw something that I just liked, I would copy it into my journal, and it just became a real source of self-expression and kind of understanding my own thoughts. And I just absolutely love journaling and want to recommend it to people. And it's a place where the personal nature of handwriting really comes into to play, where you can self-express in just a unique way, a personal way.
Yeah, and that's great. I kind of want to just stop and say you just hit on so many great things that I hear, all the time is people get into, whether it's fountain pens or, whatever it might be that causes you to want to write more. People are thinking they're kind of so used to dealing with technology and all these other things, they kind of don't know what to write, even if they learn cursive or get kind of re-inspired to write. You just gave out several great ideas, journaling, transcribing, whether it's inspirational poems, any, scripture or whatever texts are inspiring, even just like writing down thoughts. I find personally as a business person, I find that kind of mind mapping and doing, kind of more creative kind of whiteboarding of ideas with a pen on paper to be really helpful and just tactile, and it helps to process things in a different way than it does typing it out. So there's a lot of great ways to be able to use your writing to be able to do that. And personally, the thing I like about your system is coming from the lens of a fountain pen enthusiast. It's a great way to really be able to utilize a lot of the wonderful aspects of a fountain pen. Being able to write in these kind of swooping letters, keep all your letters connected as you're writing, you get that smooth flowing ink. So it really hits on a lot of the great things about fountain pens, and then learning cursive really helps to kind of reinforce all the best aspects of that. And
right. Well, what you're saying is fountain pens can get you into cursive, but cursive can also get you into fountain pens. And I have, not only did we just get amazing support from the pen community for our Kickstarter, but I discovered fountain pens again. I used to have them when I was, a girl or a teenager coming up. But they're just amazing pens on the market, and I love them. I really like these Pelican.
Is that the twist?
Twisters.
Yeah.
This is a very beginner pen, but they come in our colors, orange, lime, and I've got to get the silver and mauve ones.
There you go.
And they have a nice pen hold on them that make them wonderful. And I'm recommending this to all my elementary school teachers, that they, when their kids get done and have done well, they just tell their parents, get them a fountain pen. This will be a fun thing to do.
And I don't carry that Pelican twist, but I might have to now that you've mentioned it here. You gave it such a good plug. But I have a couple of those pens. I know exactly what you're talking about. They're very much geared for kid pens.
They are. I think they
well
make them in Germany for the kids.
Exactly. For me personally, I have 2 kids. They're 6 and 4. So my son is the older one. He's in 1st grade. I've got him to play a little bit with fountain pens. We're getting there. But I know this is made for kind of in a range of kids to be able to learn. But what would you consider to be really kind of the ideal age for anybody with younger kids that want to kind of get into it? Is it the kind of thing that's like we should really wait until they have a foundation and print first? Or, I think of, the typical grade that cursive would be introduced as kind of 3rd grade. I know it's probably changed over the years a bit. Is it okay to introduce it earlier, or should you really kind of wait?
It is. So I have my own granddaughter who's 7 and a half. Is just loving it this summer. I got to teach her. And we have a lot of 2nd graders, a lot of schools asking for 2nd grade. My thing was end of 2nd grade, 3rd grade definitely. 8-year-olds have no problem with this.
Okay.
But last week we got a request from some kindergarten people. And there is a debate out there about cursive first. Like, don't even bother with print, just go straight to cursive.
Wow.
Now, if you were interested in that, I would say get the posters and start out with that gross muscle memory. Don't force anything with this. My own personal philosophy was better late than early. The kids can pick something up a lot better than they can be forced to, try to understand it before they're ready. But those posters, we really feel like that's going to fill in a big gap, and that's what we're recommending to these kindergartners.
That's wonderful, wonderful feedback that I will personally take and go use for my own kids, because they can all have a choice. They're going to learn cursive, whether they're taught in schools or not.
I'm going to send you a set of posters, just so you can see what they're like.
That would be wonderful. I appreciate that. And everybody else is going to be curious about them too. These magical posters.
Oh, okay. Well, that's right. That's okay. I'm not sending them then. It'll be on the website. Let's put it that way.
That sounds good. Now, you mentioned getting good support from the fountain pen community. That doesn't surprise me in the least, because the fountain pen community is extremely supportive in that way, especially talking about writing and cursive. I know a couple of years ago when the Department of Education stopped requiring handwriting in schools, I think it was something like only 5 states then still offered cursive writing in schools. Now, I'm actually reading some things that they're kind of coming back from that, and there's several states that are looking to put it back into the curriculum. And there's a lot of interesting studies out there about how handwriting in cursive especially can really help to, trigger different cognitive development and things like that. What is your take on that? Coming from a teaching background, obviously you're passionate about teaching handwriting. You're very studied, more so than I am probably in this area.
There's so much information now, and there are plenty of other people promoting, handwriting and saying, we're not dropping that, and starting to talk about the benefits of it. But I think the science community, what they've done is they've looked at MRIs of people handwriting, and they can see what parts of the brain are lighting up, and it's those parts that have to do with language and comprehension and creativity and thinking. So that's really important. And when I discovered that is really when I got the passion for handwriting. I thought, we can't get rid of something without knowing what the unintended consequences of that might be, when it seems to be so vital and important to the whole learning process.
Absolutely. I'm completely with you. I fully support that. I'm a realist too. I think that technology is great. We wouldn't be having this conversation right now if it weren't for technology and being able to publish it online and stuff. Absolutely a place for that. But I think that there's a lot of great aspects to handwriting. And the thing that I love that you've done, to give you a shameless plug here, is to take something that normally is so, thought of as being so burdensome, to be able to learn this handwriting in cursive especially, and taking it into something that's not only manageable but also fun, and being able to do it and see the progress so quickly is really, that's what you need. It gives you that momentum to really be able to carry forward and continue doing it, which I think is really important for kids as well as any adults who are interested in doing it. So bravo to you on that.
And it's not one or the other. I love my technology too, and I just appreciate more and more things. I used to be, oh, what's that texting about? Now I love texting.
Yeah.
But it doesn't replace handwriting.
That's true.
I can't text my journal, and I can't, I love being able to recognize the handwriting of every family member. That's meaningful to me. There's a connection there that's very, human.
Yeah.
And personal. And I want to be able to read Grandma's recipes, and I want my grandkids to be able to read Grandma's recipes. That's meaningful. So.
Yeah, I think that's wonderful, and the two can definitely coexist. Now, something else that we had talked about previously that I want to touch on a little bit is posture, and how important your posture is when doing proper handwriting. Now, I think that's something that a lot of people are completely ignorant to, about how to have proper hand positioning and writing with your arm and not your wrist and things like that. So do you mind explaining to me a little bit about that?
Sure. And it's again, I think you can break it down into something we can understand pretty easily. I call it the 3 Ps: posture, paper, position, and pen or pencil hold. Okay, so you've got posture, and it's not hard, and especially for learners. I tell students, after you've learned to write well, you can stand on your head if you want to and write, because you know what you're doing. But when you're learning, sitting up good and straight and tall with your feet flat on the ground and kind of slightly bent at the waist, it's just a way that you can give your arms the maximum range and ease for writing. So you're using one hand to hold paper, the other hand to write, and that paper needs to be positioned at a slant. Cursive is on a slant, and when the paper is positioned correctly for a right-handed or left-handed student, you're going to be able to do much better. Also, initially, that paper needs to have guidelines on it. You need to have that baseline, midline, and top line, so that you can form those letters accurately and with the right proportions. And those 3 lines will help you do that. And I think the most important thing that I can tell a student is about pencil hold. And one of the questions that you had kind of sent to me beforehand was, let me see if I can read it here. What do you believe is the greatest tip within the workbook? And I think it's when I talk about the celebrity hold. Okay, and it's taken from the idea of the celebrity wave, okay, or the Miss America wave, or the royal wave. And the idea is that you keep your hand very relaxed and you're moving the entire arm. Because if you did this, you would get tired very fast. That's about the same thing. The way that relates to pen hold is if you're holding your pen too tight, it's going to cause a lot of tension in your arm, and it's the same thing as as waving it back. You're putting a lot of stress on that writing hand. So if you learn to hold your pen very lightly, like a celebrity, maybe one day you can have a nice signature.
Yeah, that's a great tip. I'm glad you mentioned that. Yeah, and especially, I have young kids, and I end up dealing with a lot of the waving thing. Doesn't seem to tire them out, but makes me tired just watching them. But Those are great tips. I think that the posture is a really important thing for sure. I know especially, we're talking about cursive writing here, and I don't want to step too outside of my own area of knowledge, but I know if you get even more into like actual calligraphy and doing things like that, it becomes all that much more important. And I know especially when you're learning something new, building a proper foundation is really important. So just like when you're a musician and you're trying to learn your scales, you want to make sure that you got those down before you go moving on to fancier things. Making sure that you have the proper positioning and everything is really important, especially if you want to move on and learn more advanced styles of handwriting. So that's just something to throw in.
I was teaching a group of kids this summer in cursive camp, and we had a couple of older elementary school kids who don't really want to be told what to do, and so she was kind of slouching over the table, had her pen, kind of like this, and said, "Oh, wait, we got to do the 3-piece here, posture, paper, pencil," and the change in the way her handwriting looked surprised even her. She kind of looked at us and looked down at her paper and sat up straight and got going. And it was dramatic, really, the difference in the way she was able to control that pencil and write.
Wow.
Good posture, paper in the right position, and holding her pen right.
So there might be hope for some of the rest of us too. If it could be that simple, honestly, I think it probably could be, because I hear all the time, oh, I would be more into pens, I would write more, but my handwriting's so terrible. But what I'm hoping is that they will now have no excuse. That you're making it so simple.
What we're finding is that you can start out with the bigger lines. Line width does matter. Okay. Now I had a woman who did a kind of a workshop for employees of the Boy Scouts at their national headquarters in Dallas. And one of the ladies really complained, she said, "I don't like this because it's making me write too big. It's uncomfortable." And so what we're actually going to be doing is we're going to, we're doing some tweaks on line size. But we started out, in our book, we're using the lines that are recommended for second graders.
Okay.
So that line width is 5/8. Okay, 5/8 from top to bottom and then the midline.
Okay.
When you get to third grade, they recommend 1/2 inch.
Okay.
So it's a 1/2 inch guideline width. And then after that, you're using wide rule paper or college rule paper. College rule, I still don't like college rule. I prefer to have more space and with my writing. So I think that's kind of a progression that people go through, and we're thinking about how to incorporate that.
Interesting.
As well. But it turns out starting out large is very, very useful. And we discovered this when we did a presentation at the National Scouting Museum. And we made the letter strings, put the letter strings in very large charts that we mounted on foam core and hung them on the wall. And we had students go through and just use their finger or a ball or something to make the letter shapes and the letter strings. And after they had done that, they sat down and were able to write the string. These were people who'd never done cursive before. And so we're incorporating that into our school program, providing the posters that have the large letter strings on them that students can use for gross motor muscle memory, and then they can apply it with the smaller fine motor skills.
That's very interesting. And just for reference, for those who are in the fountain pen world, talking about line rulings, typically what we see, a lot of the paper that we bring in is European or Japanese paper, because those are much more fountain pen heavy cultures. So a lot of the products come from there because a lot of the kids in schools are still using that paper because they're being taught with fountain pens, not so much here so in the US. So when you're talking about wide ruled paper, that's about 8 millimeters. So, if you're looking at Clairefontaine, a lot of the wider ruled notebooks within the fountain pen community is more that wide ruled, and then college rule is about 7 millimeters, so I found. which is probably the more common standard line size for a lot of the, you know, European size paper and Japanese paper, really. And then you get some outside of that, some are a little thinner. It's rare that you get wider than that. So probably for anyone who's watching who is interested in getting some paper for practicing, talking about like the 5/8 and the wider stuff like that, you might have a hard time finding that in like the fountain pen friendly, you know, European style paper. You're probably going to need to buy like student, you know, intended student grade paper. And, you know, like the rulings you have in your book here is definitely much wider than what you would typically see in your lined, you know, paper that you would buy, you know, out and about, unless it was specifically for teaching purposes.
Do you sell more lined or unlined paper?
Honestly, the thing that's been more popular lately has been dot grid paper, which is, you know, 5mm ruling, basically. I think a lot of people who are actively journaling are bullet journaling is a very popular thing that's caught on in 2016. I think that has really helped. Dot paper has been around for a number of years, but recently it's really caught on for bullet journaling. So a lot of people are using very fine writing. You know, 5mm is pretty narrow. If you don't like 7, you know, if you don't like the college rule, you definitely wouldn't like that. But yeah, it's very, very fine. But generally speaking, lined is the next most popular from that, and usually that 7mm line is kind of the sweet spot for most people. But people who get really into paper get really specific too. So there's all different flavors out there, you know, in terms of the ruling, and even like the color and faintness of the lines themselves, you know, matters a lot, and the shade of paper and the weight and all these kinds of things. That's what fountain pen people really get into. So there's plenty to explore there. I know that's kind of a newer world for you, you know.
Right, I'm loving it.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. How important was Kickstarter for you? I mean, I know that's where you got your start, but you know, I'm kind of curious to hear a little bit more backstory about how you kind of stumbled upon Kickstarter and why you decided to use that as your platform for really kicking it off. Well,
we knew that we needed to raise some money, and we thought, how are we going to do this? And I have two of my children that work with me, and they are much more into this and savvy, but my son knows a lot about, you know, the whole, well, he grew up with it, you know. Yeah. It's not a millennial, he's a little bit ahead of the millennials, but he certainly grew up with computers. His dad was an engineer, and so, you know, he just said, this is what we have to do, Mom, you know, Kickstarter, told me about it, and get online, get this done. But it was just a super wonderful experience for us, you know. It's kind of the whole idea of the internet and the reach that you have with it, you know. People from, when we started getting Europeans calling in and wanting to pledge for our idea, it was just very gratifying to realize, oh my gosh, we can really reach around the world.
Wow.
This. And we had, you know, a lot of international support for the Kickstarter. But initially, you know, put your idea out there, you see if people are interested, try to get your friends. But it turns out that your friends are not the ones who support you, particularly, or necessarily. It's people who like your idea. So you've got to go out and find them. And honestly, when we found the pen community, fountain pen community, and it was just, you know, serendipity, someone found out about us and then took our brochures to a pen show in California. And then, you know, things just really started to zoom. And then we also had people like yourself, pen retailer, came on with us, and you know, that was really nice.
Yeah, unfortunately, I discovered a little bit late to be able to actually back your Kickstarter. I'll never regret that, or I'll always regret that. But
actually, we kept hearing about Goulet pens. People would say, "Oh, we learned about you from Goulet pens," and we thought, you know, how did we ever meet them? And I think you said we met at a pen show last spring, but I didn't remember that. But we kept saying, you know, these Goulet people are sending us a lot of business.
That's true, yeah. Because I was getting questions. You know, you mentioned you started to catch on in the pen community. I started getting questions immediately at that time, and people were like, "Can you carry CursiveLogic and all this kind of stuff?" And you were just Kickstarter at the time, and I was like, "Well, they're not retailing yet. Like, I know I can," but I was like, yeah. So I did a little bit of research, and I really liked the program that you put together. So I was referring people your way. probably a year or so before we even started talking about carrying your books. And so I'm glad to hear that that helped, because, when I see something good like this, obviously I would like to be affiliated with you and be able to help in that way. But even still, just being able to have a great idea that catches on like that is really pretty cool. So,
a very neat partnership so far. We really appreciate you.
Well, thank you. I appreciate you too. And that's, that's kind of what the pen community is all about. You'll see a lot of that going on, and you're feeling love now. Obviously, it'll continue on. That's wonderful. So, for you, I guess, as we kind of look to wrap up here, thinking about the future, where you would kind of like to see this go. What would, what's some of your things that you're considering doing? Are you really trying to hit in schools? Are you trying to get more, retailers, or both? Or, what would if you could just take it to the moon, what would that look like for you here?
Well, it's both, actually. There's we want to see handwriting become something that's just kind of a natural part of things, and there's just no need to pit it against technology. We have both. And so what we're hoping to do is get into schools, because it turns out that teachers they're like another easy market. It's like when teachers see this, they go, oh my goodness, this will definitely help me get, help the kids. And so the school market, I feel like we just have to figure out how to get there and let them know what we're doing, and kids will be doing that. The other thing that has just been so gratifying for me is all of the feedback we've gotten about kids enjoying this and having their confidence built. I just keep hearing that his writing looks great, but his confidence is, and you're providing a skill at just the right time when it just has an impact on developing children, their academic development, the personal development. So, we feel committed to all those things. We want to be in schools, and we feel like we can really help in schools. An opportunity that came to me literally yesterday was a gentleman who is very interested in making this kind of skill development available to at-risk students and to inmates. Apparently, guys, in prison want to develop this skill. They are very into tattooing and calligraphy and handwriting. So, I really see handwriting as a way that uniquely touches the heart and the mind. And I really feel like it can be a way to push a restart for a lot of people. And anyway, this is what this gentleman, who's also involved in the pen community, I might add, thinks. And so he wants to start working on that. And we're just like, wow. And for me, that's particularly meaningful because CursiveLogic got started helping a marginalized 23-year-old. It's the inspiration for this. So that's always been on my heart, that's where I want to give it back.
Well, that's what's so cool about your story is, you didn't set out to change the world from the get-go. You really just wanted to help Josh. You wanted to help him learn how to write better. And now you're helping to change the world as a result of that. And that's really cool to hear.
Let it be.
That's wonderful. All right. Well, that's all the questions I had. Did you have any kind of final thoughts that you wanted to share on anything?
No, I didn't. It's just been so much fun talking to you.
That's
I really
great.
Appreciate the opportunity, and I'm glad for the chance to get in front of your audience. There's something else.
Yeah, absolutely. So for sure, I'm sure all of you watching are going to have some wonderful feedback for Linda here. She's been so generous with her time to share this with us today. So please leave comments and feedback on YouTube, on the blog. Let us know so that she can see the comments too. Feel the love. If you've been involved in CursiveLogic, obviously we sell at gouletpens.com. That's not the point of this video, but of course if you want to buy it, that's there. You can also check it out on cursivelogic.com. She's got a lot of information on her site, good backstory, a nice video that she made about how to actually, the kind of the story that fills in some of the holes of what we haven't talked about here today. But you can check all of that out for sure. So it's a great program. I highly recommend it that you check it out. And Linda, thanks again so much.
Brian.
Really appreciate it very much. So if you haven't subscribed already to our YouTube channel, make sure that you do so you can get more great videos like this. Thank you so much for watching, and right on.